Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 5 to Thrive Live. I'm Karolyn Gazella, and I co-host this show with my good friend, Dr. Lise Ullschuler. Wow, what an interesting show we have lined up for you today. We'll be talking about saliva. Yes, saliva. My expert guest on this topic says our saliva is sending us messages, and it's time to listen up. With me today is Dr. Patti Milligan, who holds a doctorate in the neuroscience of taste. She is also a registered dietitian and a nutrition expert who has been in the nutrition field for 40 years. In fact, I met Patti a very long time ago, and I'm so glad we recently connected. But before we start this fascinating conversation, I'd like to thank our sponsors, beginning with Cetria, a patented form of glutathione clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is the master antioxidant and the body's primary defense against free radicals. It also helps support respiratory health. For more information, visit cetriaglutathione.com. Also, cognizant citicoline, which is nature's way of keeping the brain's energy-producing centers firing on all cylinders. If you're looking for a way to enhance your brain function, including memory, focus, and attention, look for Cognizant on the label or go to cognizant.com for more information. ProThrivers Wellness Brain is a product that contains Cognizant as well as other brain-supporting nutrients and herbs. You can find ProThrivers Wellness Brain online at pureformulas.com. There's also ProThrivers Wellness Sleep, which combines higher dose melatonin and other sleep supporting natural ingredients specifically designed for thrivers. You can find ProThrivers Wellness Sleep also at pureformulas.com. And Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, it's a best-selling probiotic for more than 30 years. It contains 12 probiotic strains that are shelf-stable, so no refrigeration is required because of a very unique 3-year fermentation process. It's a very effective probiotic. Learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. Well, Dr. Patti Milligan, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's my honor to be in this spot.
Yes, it's great. And I just love this topic. So I also love that you call yourself a saliva enthusiast, and you even have done a TED Talk on this topic. So tell us why you got so interested in saliva of all things.
I know, it sounds crazy. And just a little context. So I've been in the field for so long, and I was getting ready to work with high-level executives, and they were always like, you know, Patti, I can do high-performance nutrition at home. I can do it at work, kind of. It's when I travel that everything goes, you know, terrible in a handbag, if you will. And I thought that was so interesting. And then here in Scottsdale, as you know, we have a Mayo Clinic, and I was meeting with one of the aeronautical medicine docs. And I was kind of, you know, battling with this because jet lag has always been a big issue. And he's like, you know, it's curious because we found out from NASA that our saliva drops 30 to 50% when we travel. And that really got my antenna up. And then I went over to school, no disrespect to any schools in the US, but I was trying to find a neuroscience of taste doctorate program that worked out on the brain side of things, not necessarily tied to the food industry. And there I sat down with some professors because I wanted to study taste buds, because I'm thinking, oh heavens, if we understood the natural progression of a taste bud, maybe we could marry healthier eating and compliance to healthier eating faster. Maybe it would be kind of the secret sauce, if you will. So there was a French professor, and he sat up and he said, Madam, you can study taste buds till you're blue in the face. It's not about your taste buds. It's the quality of saliva. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are two different people commenting about saliva. So then I took a deep dive, and I was amazed. And you'll appreciate this because of all the great work that you do, that the saliva flow is attached to the side of the nervous system that's all about rest and relaxation and regeneration. So a drop in saliva when we travel signals the nervous system to stay in fight or flight. So I think it's kind of curious that it all kind of came full circle back to the nervous system, which I think kind of runs our life.
I have to tell you, Patty, I am fascinated by this. I mean, I've been in this industry since
Yes.
1992. I've written about saliva testing and everything else. I had no idea that the quantity and quality of our
Yes.
saliva, it was linked to the central nervous system so intimately. So I can't wait to dive in. So when you say that our saliva is talking to us and we should listen,
Yes.
what actually can our saliva tell us?
Yes. So it's interesting. There's 4 silos right now in spit world, in saliva world. And I
Okay.
think it's curious. And I really consider myself a town crier. I really don't have that high of expertise in any of the clinical or biochemistry of saliva, but I can talk to all the researchers to get them to talk to each other. So the first is near and dear to my heart. I worked pediatric oncology for years. And you probably can appreciate the nutritionist was always called in right before the patient was able to go home. And this was very young kids, 18 months, 2 years, and it would be refeeding. How quickly can you get them to keep a meal settled in their body, because then they could be discharged home? So that was a big burden, and I never thought about saliva. So there's a group in clinical research that studies xerostomia, which is a fancy big word, but it really means dry mouth. And so they're looking at ways to enhance and increase saliva flow because it's so related to the digestive tract. And then, really quickly, in that saliva, or in that silo, I should say, there's also a piece as we age, we lose saliva flow and the risk of choke. Now I'm in a choke, sorry. On cue, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's saliva flow, and so the risk of choke goes up almost 80%. And so what happens, and you can think about all these people in nursing homes, when there's a risk of choke that's high, they start to separate themselves from wanting to go to the dining hall because they don't want to be embarrassed and choke over the meal. And so then the clinicians have said that leads to social isolation, malnourishment, and perish. So we have both ends of the spectrum, little kids in this dry mouth and elderly in dry mouth. And that's why I want to be a town crier. So that's the first saliva or silo, sorry.
Mhm.
Second silo is related to the biochemistry. So you're, like you say, what can it tell us? Right now, it's a great like frontier of trailblazing work, identifying saliva biomarkers as it relates to degenerative disease. So there, a shout out, there's a great physician in Florida and in California that are studying it related to breast cancer and also Alzheimer's. And they right now are saying 5 years before a mammogram, or by the time that you have tau protein in your brain signaling that you have memory deficit, they can pick up a metabolite in saliva to dictate that you are on the path right now for breast cancer or Alzheimer's. So that's exciting work. I believe one day we'll have a spit kit at home and we'll spit and and so the third silo is related to nutritional deficiencies. I mean, how critical would that be? As you wake up, you spit, you're like, oh heavens, today is a day for magnesium. Today is for glutathione. Today is for vitamin D, because it reflects what's going on so quickly. Within 6 hours, your cellular levels get communicated to your saliva. And the fourth is kind of my sweet spot, which is travel resilience. So this is related to saliva flow and that nervous system switch. I always think of the two sides of nervous system, and I would appreciate any feedback from you, is the fight or flight, or what we call sympathetic, as being one side of the teeter-totter, and then this rest, relaxation, regenerative side is the other side of the teeter-totter. And all day long, we go between the two when we're on Earth. But when we fly, we get stuck on high. We get stuck in that way of the fight or flight system. And in that, there's all sorts of correlations. So I'll stop here and let you ask any more questions.
Well, yeah, because this is a lot, but it is fascinating. And like I mentioned, I'm used to writing and reading about cortisol levels and doing
Yes.
saliva testing to judge cortisol levels. And we know that cortisol is the stress hormone. And so it makes sense to me that there would be other things in there that we can look at. But when you're talking about these areas of interest, these silos, as you call them, how far along are we? Are we about the same in all 4 silos, or are we just in the preliminary research phase? Are we able to use this information in a practical manner? Where are we at when it comes to the actual research associated with these silos?
Yes, incredibly great question. And I have to tell you that, as you well know, because you've written so much, there's many phases that research goes through. And
Yes.
we are coming out of the clinical research into the practical consumer. So I would say, I don't want to predict, so any saliva researchers out there, please have grace. But I believe within 18 months, we will see these tests be available for consumer use. Now, the dry mouth, which we can go into, because there's so many ways that you can stimulate your saliva flow and switch that nervous system into rest and relaxation. And, as you know, we're in turbulent times, that I think there's a way that we can check in with our saliva 4 times a day. And if you recognize that, I'm not as juicy as I would like, there's definitely foods that you can consume, and then a traditional Chinese medicine way to stimulate your saliva flow. And again, the benefit is it's bi-directional for the nervous system. So by stimulating saliva flow, you help shift the body into that delicious side of the nervous system that's rest and relaxation, and vice versa. When we're in that rest and relaxation, I always say, when people are on the massage table and they get up when their face is down and there's a pool of drool.
Yeah, I love
Part
that.
of that is, you have a saliva flow when you're in that side of the nervous system. So bi-directional, meaning it can stimulate a saliva flow or not, and tell you you're in that form of the nervous system or not, or you can check in with that nervous system and get your saliva flow back. So that's the good news. So anyway, long explanation, just to say, just hang in there. We're very close. So there's saliva symposiums and some saliva institutes that I can share with people if they want to stay in touch with the research, because it's getting close.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we can definitely circle back on that towards the end of the show. I want to get into some practical things because
Sure.
right now you've been focusing more, you just were now focusing more on
Yes.
quantity, saliva flow.
Yes.
Is there a quality issue, or is it primarily saliva flow, and is it quantity, or is it the quality of our spit? Does that come into play?
And again, another great question. And honestly, we really don't know. That's a little of the Pandora's box. We know that just like in blood testing, there's a whole set of constituents that we can study, everything from inflammatory markers to biomarkers for cancer, to vitamin deficiencies. So that same avenue is being looked in saliva. It's just that it's really the technology of the testing machines to be so sophisticated to measure something so small in saliva that tends to be much more robust in blood. So, So I don't know if that answers it.
It did. Yeah, it did. So I'd like to go back to quantity, because it seems like even if it's not a dry mouth situation, what I hear you say is that the quantity of our saliva makes a difference. Even if you are not diagnosed with dry mouth, we still need to have juicy saliva, as you mentioned. And you mentioned that there's foods and traditional Chinese medicine. What are some practical things that we can do to actually enhance the quantity and increase saliva in our mouths?
Yes, great question. So I love the word that they call the saliva producing foods. It's called sialagogues. It's kind of a fun word to say.
Yeah, it is.
And it comes in 4 categories. And none of this will surprise anyone because you can just recall the last time you've had this food item and you're like, oh, yeah, it was juicy afterwards. Number 1, anything with citrus. So a squeeze of lime or lemon in water, even though it seems innocuous, is enough to stimulate saliva flow. And grapefruit and orange and all of that category. So citrus is number 1. Second, interestingly enough, is the chewing aspect of chewing goji berries, dried cranberries, and pomegranate seeds stimulate the flow of saliva. So that's the second category of foods. Third, just to throw one other sassy term out there, is, as you know, in taste buds, there's a 5th category of taste called umami, which is just so satisfying to the taste buds and the overall body. Foods that have umami are things like mushroom soup, miso soup, Thai soup, and all of these soups also produce a saliva flow. And then last category is teas. So cinnamon tea, African red bush tea, rooibos tea, peppermint tea, all of those teas also produce saliva flow. And if I may share just a darling story that really got me into this was, oh gracious, now it's like 8 years ago. I went down to the oldest wellness resort in the world, and it's called Rancho La Puerta. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's in Tecate, Mexico. And I was giving a presentation to parents, and I was just entering this work. So at the end of it, I kind of flippantly said, you know, I believe there'll be a day where saliva will be appreciated in everyone's life, especially children. And afterwards, I have this young Korean couple that walks up. And as they walk up, now the wife starts to cry. And I'm feeling, oh, goodness, what did I say? And the fellow introduced himself and said, you know, this is my wife. And the reason why she's crying is we have 3 children, and our middle child has been diagnosed with failure to thrive. And for all of those that have children out there, that is the most devastating diagnosis in the world, that your child's head circumference and weight ratio to height is not meeting the growth standards.
Mm-hmm.
And he then said, he goes, and we're up at Stanford. And now when we go meet with the pediatrician, they bring in a social worker and a protective services person. That's why my wife is crying.
Oh.
They are thinking we are doing something to Colin. And he goes, we've never heard about saliva. And what he was doing, and hopefully nobody's enjoying a meal at this point, but he was chewing his food and spitting it out instead of swallowing it. And so he said, we're going to try your saliva protocol. So they went away. 6 months later, oh, I get so emotional about this. 6 months later, he sends me an email and he says, you have changed our life. Colin is no longer failure to thrive. And the pediatrician is embarrassed he hasn't thought about this. And I don't think you know, but I'm a private equity funder. I will fund anything you do. And, I mean, the beautiful part, I don't really have anything that I needed funding for.
Yeah,
but, I got in touch with a pediatrician up at Stanford, and he's like, well, you know, at Stanford, we got money to spend. He goes, I got $2 million. Let's do a study and study this. And that's right when COVID hit. So all of that went kind of on suspension. So I just haven't revisited that. But interestingly enough, what they did was before breakfast, Colin was given a handful, and literally a handful, only 10 goji berries. And he chewed that, and that produced enough saliva that he ate an egg the first time in his life instead of depositing it once he had chewed it. Mm-hmm. And then before lunch and dinner, thank goodness he was Korean. So he was very accepting of soups. So he did a Korean style miso soup for lunch and dinner, and voila, he was able to eat all the foods. So
that's great. I
knew I was onto something.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great story. So when you talk about the saliva protocol, which I love the fact that you've created a protocol for this, is it primarily food-based, or are there other aspects of the saliva protocol?
It is food-based. However, I did discover in traditional Chinese medicine, there's tongue movements. There's
Mm.
4 positions of tongue. So now I've included that in the protocol because that so quickly shifts the nervous system. And probably you could speak, volumes about the vagus nerve, the 10th nerve in our body that regulates all the autonomic or automatic systems in our body. And often, as you know, the vagus nerves gets hijacked because of the stress in the world. And that's when that does. Then saliva begins shutting down, immune system is suspended, and digestive function is suspended. So I can teach you these 4 movements. They're very quick. We can do it right here on air.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a minute to have you describe like maybe your favorite
Sure.
movement.
Okay. Yeah. So it has 4 positions with your tongue. So I will say them, and then if you agree, then we'll do 2 rounds of them and see if we produce juiciness. So the
Okay.
first tongue position is at the roof of your mouth. The second position is underneath your bottom teeth, then your right cheek and left cheek. So it goes roof, bottom, right cheek, left cheek. And you do that 4 times. And ideally, the traditional Chinese medicine way is that you do it 9 times to be able to shift your vagus nerve. But for quick purposes here, why don't we just do 2 rounds and see again, to the audience if they feel the juiciness. And
Yeah.
one way, yeah, and I really do think, and I'm pushing the envelope here, but I do think that sleep experts, this is something to get on board because I think some of the sleep issues are related to the vagus nerve hijacked
hmm
away. And
hmm
so we need to bring the vagus nerve back into position so we can produce and induce good sleep.
Well, I while you were talking, I was doing it. And
Oh,
I did in fact produce more saliva. So I want to remind our listeners, this is just a something, we often talk about deep breathing and just simple things people can
yes,
do. So this is just, I love it, Patty, because this is so simple. So
yes,
roof of the mouth, behind the
yes,
bottom teeth, to the
yes,
right, to the left,
yes,
and do it. And you're saying in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, they say do it
yes.
like 8 or 9 times.
Correct. Exactly. And
Awesome.
uh, and and the other thing is, which I think is funny, during COVID, I was getting all these clients that we would be up on Zoom, right, to do nutrition, and many times I would be speaking to the mom or the woman who's a high level executive, and she goes, "I am losing it." She goes, "My kids are on Zoom all day long for school. We meet for dinner, and there's all these fights and difficulty and poor moods at the table. I don't care about my nutrition. I'm more concerned about my kids." And at that point, I said, you know what? Humming before a meal does deliciousness for engaging saliva and engaging the vagus nerve. So I don't know if that's something to introduce to everyone, but a humming. So hum, the birthday song, whatever your favorite song is. So, and I'm
I
really
love it.
happy, and I'm happy to report that families that did that, number one, they got such a kick out of the humming of everyone that they soon began laughing. And laughing also engages and produces the vagus nerve to come out and saliva flow.
That's awesome. Very simple things. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. I want to talk about your renewal kit for travelers because that's really when you were talking earlier about the connection between saliva and travel, I had no idea that the saliva
Yes.
production is reduced by that 30 to 50%. That's
Yes.
amazing. So, what does the renewal travel kit do for
Yes.
travelers?
Yeah. So I studied it and I wanted to, because of that saliva flow being cut, I wanted to know if I could reverse the trend, if I could do something to mitigate saliva drop that would produce a better effect on the body and then ultimately mitigate jet lag.
Mhm.
And so what I created it, and interestingly enough, since we have set all this up, I am very happy to report I sold the company and they rebranded it to Goal Time. Be ready when you get there.
Oh, that's
And
right. Okay.
yeah, and they have 3 nutrients, and they're all whole food based, because when I created this, I wanted to make sure if you were an Olympic athlete, a high level executive, going to speak in front of Congress, whatever it may be, that there wasn't any nutraceutical, pharmaceutical impact of this. So it has 3 ingredients, and the whole idea is, one is a chewable lozenge that is all essential oils and produces saliva flow. And then, as you well know, and I know, and thankfully we have Cetria glutathione in there.
Oh, good. Yeah,
and,
that's great.
and we have an elderberry and broccoli sprouts that has the tetraglutathione and sulforaphane, which also is a fancy word, but it's just, it helps the cells take out the trash, which I really think is the secret ingredient, quite frankly. And elderberry, as you well know, in all the plethora of studies, has been studied to protect the lung and the respiratory tract. So taking these 3 ingredients prior to getting on the flight, and then as you depart the flight, helps your body regulate that nervous system. So because the saliva flow is happening, your body goes, oh, chill, everything's good. I'm just like I'm on Earth.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Well,
the story.
I want to, yeah, well, no, that's great. And we only have a few minutes left, but I want to give listeners some practical things like websites. Like, where do they find out information about Goal Time, and where do they find out more information about you and your work?
Yes. So the Goal Time has the website of getgoaltime.com. So that's the first. Second is probably LinkedIn, quite frankly. I've been so poor on social media. It's probably embarrassing to say, but I mean, I do have a social media profile, and it's just my name, Patti Milligan. But most of my research or things that I want to town cry about, I put on LinkedIn.
That's great. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left. How can we
Yes.
take this information and use it practically? We talked about the saliva protocol.
Yes.
I think that's great. We talked about the travel. What's some
Yes.
final advice on how we can listen to our saliva?
Sure. I would say 4 times a day, check in with your saliva. Check in to see how juicy you are. You wake up in the morning and you check in and you're like, oh gosh, I'm a little bit dry. I'm going to take a squirt of lemon and water before I begin my day. Get that saliva flowing right before lunch. Now, you might have had a hectic morning and you might have camped and shut down your saliva with your nervous system. So check in right before lunch, check in before dinner, and then check in before bed. And you can do the TCM, the traditional Chinese medicine way, to get saliva flow if you realize you're low, or you can do one of the sialagogue foods.
Yeah, and tonight when I eat my dinner, I'm gonna hum a little tune before I eat my dinner. So, yeah. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Patti, for joining me and talking about this interesting conversation. It's Dr. Patti Milligan on LinkedIn, and it's getgoaltime.com. Check it out. Check in with your saliva 4 times a day, and this is perfect. Thanks again, Patti.
Sure. Thank you. Have a marvelous, juicy evening.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that wraps up this episode of 5 to Thrive Live. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Pro Thrivers Wellness Sleep Formula, Cetria Glutathione, the Superior Glutathione to support liver and immune health, Cognizant Citicoline to help enhance memory, focus, and attention, and Dr. O'Hara's award-winning shelf-stable probiotic. This has been a great show. May you experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone. Have a great night.